So, Mary, thank you so much for joining us today to answer some quick but important questions that our students typically have. And I'd love to start off by having you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Gibbs. I'm a senior data scientist, actually starting a new role this Monday. So very excited about that, working with large language models, which is always fun. Let's see. I graduated with my master's in data science from GW in 2020, and I've been working as a data scientist ever since. I've done a lot of different things from commercial and government consulting, cybersecurity, working on a platform that helps individuals tailor their resume to job descriptions, and now venturing into a new role. So ever since graduating, been really involved in the data science space.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And congratulations on starting a new job soon.
Thanks.
Okay, so I have some questions for you. And let me start with, in your experience, given all the different experiences that you've had, what do you think are the must-have top 3 skills needed by someone looking to be successful in the industry? Or another way of putting it is, what do employers get super excited about when they see it on a resume?
Well, that's a good question. I think this one's actually pretty hard to construe on a resume, but I think you can kind of get to it more when you're interviewing is I think persistence. I think that's a top one because this field is evolving so rapidly and there's so many different avenues and there's so many different things to learn within the domain that you have to be persistent in, learning new things and keeping up on the latest and, not being discouraged too easily and, you know, um, keep going forward. And I think that's a big one that I look for when I'm interviewing candidates is like, is this person going to give up easily, or are they going to help work through are they going to be able to, work through the problem? Are we going to be able to work together through the problem? Are they going to be persistent? Are we going to chase every avenue we can come up with to solve the problem at hand? That's a very important one. I think the next one I would say is communication skills. Um, you're going to be well, in most data science roles, you're not just working on a data science team, you're working cross-functionally with a lot of different parts of an organization. And the ability to take the problem, distill it down, come up with a data science solution, and then be able to break that solution down and explain it clearly to your stakeholders is an asset and something that really takes a lot of time and practice to get good at. Everyone's like, oh, communication should be last. We should put the hard technical skills first. And while those are important, I think communication is such a huge skill that is very important in this field. Um, I think the third one I would go with, oh, three.
Well, let's pick up on
I
something.
think,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh,
I'm excited. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think creativity. I know these tend to be in the like more of the soft skills, but I think these are so extremely important because like you can learn the hard skills. It's the soft skills that I think take a lot more nuance and more like development. And I think creativity. So what I mean by that is that being creative with your problem solving, sometimes it's easy to just go for, okay, like this is a class, like framing the problem in various ways that you're given and that will dictate what approach you take to solve it. But being creative with how you frame the problem, with how you interpret the problem, with coming up with different ways of measuring the performance on how you're solving the problem. There's some creative aspects in data science. I don't think it's just pure like your logic and brute forcing a problem. I think there are some creative aspects. So I think that's also a very important skill for data scientists to have.
Excellent. Those are 3 great ones and not ones you typically think of off the top of your head. So terrific. So what I was going to say was going back to the first skill or competency that you mentioned, which is persistence. You talked about keeping up with developments, not getting discouraged. what do you do, or what do you recommend people do to keep up with developments? Our students are going to graduate. Some of the
Yep.
people watching this already have. So what do you do to kind of keep that persistence going?
Yeah, I mean, even from when I graduated, like ChatGPT was not a thing. So you have to keep up. How do I keep up? I am very, I actually take a pretty structured approach to keeping up. Um, I do a couple different things. So the first one I do is on LinkedIn. I curate my feed by following individuals who are leaders in the field or, you know, doing new and innovative things in the field, because that keeps me in the loop on the latest trends and updates just by like looking at what they're posting. But I curate that heavily because I want content that's meaningful and not just fluffy. Which you can find some on LinkedIn, but I'm very like strict with my curation. Um, I use there's two newsletters I follow, which is TLDR and Alpha Signal, and they're pretty good with like the latest things that I can like look at and explore. And then I think I do a little bit of like Reddit machine learning, just to see what people are talking about. And I think that's how I keep up. But it's great to read and keep up by reading, but I think there's also some element of you have to take what you read and experiment and play with it and see what you can do with it. So I set aside like hour a day for reading, and then a couple hours a week to just like, all right, I read something really cool. Like, let's go do a quick implementation and play around with it. Um, and that's kind of how I stay up. I think also too when you're working on the job, it's going to require you also to stay up on the latest and greatest. So I think it's the combo of work, and then I set aside some time on my own to see, what's new.
Um, this is off my list of questions. I'm going to ask you just a quick follow-up questions. When you talk about curating LinkedIn, which, boy, that is so important. There is so much stuff out there. A lot of stuff about jobs that may or may not be useful as well. But with respect to the field, how are you finding the best people to follow? How are you doing that curation? Are there tools around? Are you following people that you see doing something else?
So I think it's pretty easy once you start following like a couple. Like, I started following a couple people like in the local data science community here, and then they follow people, and then I kind of like look at who they're following, and then when also I'm curating, I look, is this person posting like a lot of commercial promoted stuff? Are they actually like talking about the nitty gritty like details of like these new models and things? So I think for me, it's kind of like if I can look at what they've been posting and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this person. They're not really giving me anything of substance that I've been able to use, then I will like unfollow them. So that's how I kind of keep it pretty curated. But it takes quite a bit of effort. I feel like there's got to be some ways to like automate that a little bit, but I've just been kind of going with it.
Got it. Got it. Okay. That's really useful information because it's a very overwhelming amount of stuff. And some people are just looking for likes and comments and to raise their
Yep.
visibility on there. So yeah, great. So along the same kind of lines, what are some of the ways that you think students who maybe aren't familiar with the data science fields outside of their classwork can learn about the kinds of fields, the kinds of positions, or their conferences, associations, resources? What are some of the ways they can really explore not so much the nitty-gritty of data science, but the different opportunities that there might be?
I think the best way I found for that is to look at your local community. Um, we be like being in the DC area, there are a ton of different groups dedicated to data science or data related things. And they have like once a month meetings, and you just go and like see what people are talking about, network, just see like, there's gonna be a bunch of people there, ask what they do, what types of problems have they worked on. um, I know networking can be scary, but it is definitely something that you need to prioritize. It is very important. It has helped me tremendously in my career. I will say most of the jobs I've gotten in my career have been through networking, not cold applying. But code applying does work for some people, and that's fine too. But I think networking has really helped. And also I think it's helped just expand my breadth, because you get into these conversations, you're like, well, what have you been working on in your job? And they'll talk about oh, I wouldn't even have thought of that, or I wouldn't even have considered that. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, okay. Maybe that's an area I want to look more into, or maybe that's an area I want to work in. I think through those conversations, I've been able to do that. But also, I think, yeah, I mean, that goes hand in hand with, I think, staying up on what people are talking about on LinkedIn, on Reddit, and like, and you can also get a sense through those avenues as well. So it's kind of this like big like variety of different sources that I use um, to figure out, okay, what field is like interesting to me, and also looking for jobs kind of a little bit outside. If you have the skill set, but looking for jobs a little bit outside of your comfort zone or in an industry that you're interested in gaining more experience. For example, I went from commercial and government consulting, and I ended up working for a company that does cybersecurity because it was an interest of mine. And I really wanted to explore data science in that realm because it was very different than what I was doing. And so I was able to, get a job in that field and work in that field and be like, this is interesting to me, but maybe not something I want to do forever. Um, so yeah, it's kind of there's a lot of different approaches you can take, but I found that to be pretty helpful.
What about students who haven't been working in the field? Should they feel comfortable going to meetups or meetings or conferences or conversations? Sometimes students report feeling like they don't have anything to offer, and so they feel funny about going. What role do you think a student can have in a group like that?
Oh, 100% don't feel that you don't belong there. Everyone belongs there. If you have an interest in this field and this is something you want to do, you belong. Don't, that's the first thing I'm going to say. Uh, let's see. When I was transitioning, doing a career switch from neuroscience to data science right before starting my master's at GW, I went to a bunch of different tech meetups in the DC area, and I had no idea what they were talking about. It was a little overwhelming, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, however, you just tying back to that first point is persistence. You just have to keep going, and you get to hear all about all these different ideas, all these topics. And what I would do when I was there was bring a notebook. If there's something you don't know, if you don't feel comfortable asking the question, I would write it down in my notebook and Google it, that topic after the fact, and try and learn more about it. Even if it didn't benefit me, I didn't know because I didn't know if it was going to be something I would use or not, but just having the breath was good. Um, or the other thing I would go up to the speaker after and try and ask them one on one, like if I had any questions. Cause yeah, I do get nervous asking in front of a group of people and I'm, as a student. But don't let that discourage you because, you're there to learn and you have to put yourself, well, how do I want to phrase this? You're there to learn and you can ask whatever question you want. And I can promise you that I can't remember any of the dumb questions that I've seen people ask from those meetups. Like, no one's going to remember it. You're there to learn. Ask the dumb question because I'm sure someone else in the audience also asked the same question. And let me rephrase that, no question is dumb, even though you might think that. Because everyone's there trying to learn something new and take away something. But yeah, that's kind of
So the message is go. There's no downside to
go.
it.
And the other thing too is like don't just go once and then never go again. Um, Go a couple times. Like don't just write it off after the first time. You're like, I got nothing out of this. This is not worth my time. Go a couple times. I say this because one, at least I know like if I see repeated faces, I'll be like, hey, like I think I saw you at the last meetup. Like, hey, how's it going? Like, what are you up to? Like, I'll go talk to people who have seen. And also like you can't just write something off once because you did it once. You got to try it a couple times and see if it's something worth your while.
Great, great, great advice. Okay. So this may be kind of summing up everything that we've talked about, but if you were starting out today, and it's a bit of a crazy market these days,
Yeah.
what would you recommend for breaking into the field? And it's okay if you repeat things. What strategies would you kind of use to get your foot in the door? And you've alluded to some of this already, but
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would do is really make sure my resume was, up to date. Um, worded well, structured well, and there's a lot of great resources out there to help customize your resume.
Including
That's
me.
the first thing I would do. Yeah, including you, Melissa. Use all resources available to you to help you get that resume really down. And like iterate over it on it a little bit over time. You could even try A/B testing your resume. I've done that before, where I'll
Wow.
make some changes and apply and see what my like rates are of getting an interview. Um, Not that it was the most rigorous A/B testing ever, but it was easy to get a sense of, oh, I think this is getting me a little bit more traction.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
make this change.
That's a great idea. We make changes and then we say, well, this seems like it would be appealing, but if you're not getting any action on that, let's try something else.
Try something else. Yeah, try and see if you can do that. But it is hard to know because there's so many factors that go into getting to the interview process. It might not even be your resume. But it's worth trying. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is, do some cold applying. That's fine. I think there are opportunities you can get that way, but I would probably spend maybe 25 to 30% of my time cold applying and the other time going to meetups, meeting people in the local community, building relationships, networking. Because I think for me, at least, I've gotten more out of that. That is hard though, and that does take a lot of time to build and foster those relationships. So I would recommend people start doing that way before they're going to go on the job market, um, and be active there. It's going to help you in the long run. Like, don't go and then expect like the next day. Like, you have to foster those relationships over time, and that's so important. And then I think getting that first job is always the hardest. Um, but once you get that first job, I think it's easy to build momentum and, get to the place that you want to be in your career. But yeah, the first job's always the hardest. And especially in today's market, it's very hard to break in. But you have to keep trying. And try all of the things. Like, so you gotta diversify what you're trying. You can't just focus in on one thing because that might not get you the result you're trying to look for. So
Got it. Got it. Well, I can't thank you enough, Mary, for all of this advice. And I know that our students are also grateful. Good luck with the new position. Can't wait to hear how it works out. And really appreciate all you had to say. And I'll put in the little plug. Career Services is here to help students with all of the things that Mary talked about. So feel free to, students and alums, feel free to make an appointment. Thank you so much, Mary.
thank you.